Good morning, welcome back to my garden. I came up into the front yard this morning. I was planning on just doing some kind of refreshing for some containers that I have up here. And this bed that I'm looking at that these containers are in is so overgrown that I figured I really needed to tackle it. So it's kind of one of those ones that I kind of walk by and I just kind of like side eye because, well, first of all, the containers really need attention, but this bed has just gotten really overgrown, kind of got away from me. Mostly just three of the plants. They're really overgrown. So I'm going to tackle that today and also fix up the containers so that those will at least be pretty. It's really incredibly cool outside today. We've had such a cool down. We've been down in the low 50s at night, and our 10-day doesn't get up over like the mid 70s. So it's quite overcast today, and I thought, well, it's a good day to tackle this job because I'll have to be in amongst, lots of shrubs and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, I'll turn you around and show you what I'm looking at, this kind of overgrown mess that I'm going to tackle today. Okay, so this is the very front bed that is right underneath our front porch. And you can see this right here is a snow mound spirea that, ideally I should prune it if I'm going to right after it blooms, but oftentimes if I do that, it kind of makes it susceptible to spider mites. So I just left it, and I'm going to be working on that, kind of taming it back. In the past, I have actually rounded it to be like, it almost took on the form of like a big boxwood. I'm not sure that I'm going to go that extreme today. I don't know. We'll see. But here, I also have a sand cherry tree that I cut back really severely early on, just after it bloomed. And it's just really kind of taking on a very messy appearance. So I don't know. I have debated on taking this guy out for the last couple years. I think I'll limit up. You can see how much growth it takes on at the very bottom. So I think I'll at least just take those up to expose this hydrangea that's behind it. I believe this is a quick fire, and it just, it's kind of hidden back there. And then, can you see this? This is a rose. This is a climbing rose. I don't recall the variety. I'll look for it and put it up on the screen. This side bloomed beautifully with the little white blooms, early summer. It was lovely. You can still see some of the spent blooms in there, back in there. But I just don't exactly know how to take care of climbing roses. This is, and this isn't one of the ones that's like a shrub that just likes to get tall. It's kind of a monstrosity, and underneath the deck, or the front porch, it's growing up in between the slats. This is clearly just like my not knowing how to take care of it, because I'm sure for somebody who does know how to take care of them, it would be glorious. So that's this side, and then there's more of the same over here on this side. These beds kind of reflect each other. They're not exactly the same, just because obviously the shape of the beds are different. But here's another snow mound. I don't know what this one's doing. It has this interesting vertical growth habit out of the top, and then kind of shrubbier on the bottom. I don't know what's going on there. But there's this rose on this side. I pruned them exactly the same early on in the spring, and this one did not bloom at all. It's just completely foliage, completely overgrown. I don't know what to do with this. I'm borderline ready just to kind of tear out the rose, the lattice that's behind it, this shrub here, the sand cherry. It has pretty new growth, but it blooms. It blooms pretty in the spring, but it is very susceptible to aphids, which is why I cut it back hard in the spring. It's related to the rose family. Actually, it's in the rose family. It's supposed to be just short-lived, but this one just kind of keeps going, and it's yeah, I don't know. It just ends up looking pretty messy. So there's some grooming that needs to go on underneath on the Brunnera, and yeah, this bed it just really needs help. So I'm going to work on this bed a bit and, you know, maybe cut back the daylily foliage. This side doesn't look bad. These are pretty. These barberry and the spirea, those are looking pretty. The lilac back there, those are all right. But this side definitely needs some help. And then I'm pretty sure it's clear here in these containers that you can see what I am needing to work on. I used to have boxwoods here, but early on this spring I took those out, planted them out in different areas, and I put in these lemon cypress because I wanted them to mirror the one that's down there. I also have one, well, you can't hardly see it now because it's kind of tucked in by the butterfly bush right there, and then I have one down in the lower beds, and I'm not entirely sure what happened with these guys. They were hooked up to drip. It was when I went away for the 4th of July that I came back, and the tops were just dead. So I'm going to take these out and plant in some smaller ones. They do grow really fast, and so I figured, well, instead of investing in the larger size again, I would just get these smaller ones, and then I'm going to underplant them with some more Supertunia Mini Vista White. I don't anticipate that those will put on a whole lot of growth just because we are dipping down so much in temperature. They won't die until we get our first frost, which probably won't be until, which typically is until the end of October, but I don't know, with this, you know, downturn in temperature, maybe we're in for some colder temperatures sooner. At any rate, they're very pretty, and they're less expensive this time of the year than they were at the beginning of the year. So I figured, well, I'll just get some, pretty up this space, because after I prune everything back, this bed might not look very good. So anyway, so I'll underplant the lemon cypress with those, and I just think that'll be a really pretty fresh color. It'll also complement, I think, the bobo hydrangeas that are blooming right over there. You know, their color will kind of bounce off each other and pull your eye down the path, which is always fun. So anyway, I guess I should probably just start, well, I might just start by pulling out these lemon cypress just to kind of get them out of the way. I'll probably move the pots out of the way, and so I can get in there closer to the sand cherry trees and then back to the roses. I don't know. I don't mind garden maintenance. It's one of my more favorite things to do, but when there's a plant like the rose and the sand cherry that I'm just really not sure what to do with, that makes it harder for me, because I think you can kind of ruin a climbing rose if you prune it wrong. And maybe that's what I did. Maybe that's why they're so such monstrosities right now. But at any rate, I'm going to just set up the camera and try to capture this as much as I can as I go. And hopefully, in the end, it'll be better for the bed, I'm sure, but it might look kind of rough right after I get it done, but at least the containers will be pretty. Okay, really quick before I go on and before you totally shut off my channel because you're saying she doesn't know what she's doing, she's ruining that plant. I know, it's not how you really want to be pruning a snow mound spirea. You ideally want to plant this guy, and any plant that has the kind of like branching, loose habit, you want to plant it where it can just do its thing, or it's really hard to ever get it back. I've had this in the ground for probably, I want to say 18 years, 17 years maybe. It got huge. So several years ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago now, I gave it a massive hard prune, like 18 inches from the ground. And the next year it grew back and it was in its nice form. And ever since then, I've just kind of played with it. I've figured it's too big if I let it go like it wants to. It's too big for this space. I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually a bridal wreath spirea, because it gets well beyond the 5 or so foot expectations of a snow mound. So this one I just kind of play with. I know I'm meatballing it, and that's not ideal for this plant. But at this point, this front garden is kind of such a mess that I need something that's a little bit more maintained looking, I guess. I don't know. At this point, this whole front bed could probably be practically torn out and restarted with a whole new focus. So I know, and I'm telling you, I'm suggesting that this is not the ideal thing to do with this shrub, but for right now, this is what I'm doing. And sometimes it just feels good to just hack at a plant. So that's what I'm doing. So back to the hacking. all that done, all the cleanup, all the cutting back, these plants here in the front. And I'm not going to lie, it took me like all day. I kept getting very distracted. I got overwhelmed with the project, so I did all sorts of things. I watered, I watched some recaps of the Olympics, ate a couple meals. it's like 4 o'clock now. I started this morning, but then eventually I got it done. So, you know, by the power of editing, I didn't want you to think that just took me actually 15 minutes to do. It took me all day, and it looks better. It's not 100%. I do see that I'm pretty sure I'm going to want to take out the sand cherry tree and on both sides, and probably the roses as well. As important as it is to know your garden, it's also very important to know yourself as a gardener. And I'm just kind of, I don't know, obviously I like to work in my gardens, but if there's a plant that I have to work on several times throughout the year, to just even have it look okay, it's not a plant that I really want in my gardens. And that's kind of the case with both this sand cherry tree and the rose. Especially, like I said, on the one side, the rose never even bloomed this year. So it's a matter of pruning it several times. You know, I mean, it's in a tight space back there. It's pokey, obviously being a rose. So anyway, it's pokey being a rose, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to replace it with. I'm not taking anything out right now. I need to get a pretty good idea of what I'm going to replace it with before I do anything, but I think this whole front space needs a pretty good revamp. You know, with what I know now about gardening, I mean, I put this space in a long time ago, and what I know now about gardening and what I know about, like I said, about me as a gardener, I need to take that into consideration when I revamp this space. So I'll turn you around and show you the progress that I made, and then we're gonna do the fun part, and we're gonna plant up the pots. That will, I think, really help the space. All right, so here you go. You can see from the before, you know, it was quite overgrown. Cut back the sand cherry quite a bit, even took after some of the big branches with the battery operated chainsaw. Pruned, as I showed you, the snow mound spirea, took off some of the height on this rose glow barberry here. I actually even just cut back fully these heuchera and this little shrub here because they were super dry and not looking good, and I'm realizing that I like them just totally cut back rather than seeing them looking brown. So I did that, and the climbing rose. Kind of trained it up a little bit, you know, cut off the things that were coming, the branches that were coming straight out, and obviously going straight back underneath the deck. So I think it looks better. I think it looks better just kind of cleaned up and, you know, tidied up. Took off some of the dried up leaves off of this viburnum, which isn't dead, but it's not looking the greatest. But being an evergreen, I didn't want to cut that all the way back like I did the perennials and that little shrub I just showed you. Here's some deutzia that I did cut back pretty hard about a month ago, and they've pushed all sorts of new growth. So those are looking okay. The dogs have sat on this quite a few times, stepped on it, so they broke out the center of that. So I have a nice little bouquet of that in the house. And this is where the pot's gonna go. And then here's this side. This side too, you can see right there, I took off a big branch from that was kind of coming out too far anyways with the battery operated chainsaw. Cleaned up the ajuga a little bit there. It kind of dried out in the middle. Cut back the nepeta. Have the spot right here for the pot to go. Yeah, it's kind of, you know, my intention was that this sand cherry would be a multi-trunked tree, that its canopy would be up here, and then you could see the hydrangea underneath it, and that the sand cherry would kind of create some shade for the hydrangea, but they just compete too much. So, and I would prefer the hydrangea to be here versus the sand cherry. So the rose, I just basically pruned it back. I am not demonstrating how to properly prune and climbing rose, so I don't know that I did it right, but I mostly just had to clean it up and kind of tame it a little bit. So, and then again with the snow mound spirea, it's just sort of mounded now. And also, like I said before, you know, this shrub really wants to have an open kind of wild branching habit, which I'm, as you can see, inhibiting from this guy doing that. It just also gets way too big for the space. So I don't mind it in a little meatball. I think it looks kind of cute. And so yeah, this space is cleaned up, and we're ready to do the pots. You can see why I have those stones there, because the dogs like to lay under there. It's nice and cool. So I just kind of keep those stones there for myself to remember not to feel sad that I can't plant there, because the dogs will inevitably climb all over them, and to get back into their nice little cool spot. So, all right, well, let's get all of these pretty fresh plants into the pots and have us something a little bit prettier to look at right here. Well, those definitely brighten up the space a bit, don't they? I'm glad that my eye goes right to that and that. and maybe then not as much to the area beyond it. And I'm just not sure what I'm doing with. So I'm pretty happy with those, how those turned out. They're super cute. I always think the lemon cypresses are just a cheery evergreen, and they generally do pretty well for me. So I'm not really sure what happened with the ones that were in these pots, but you saw that I cut off the top of one of them. One of them was kind of too far gone, but the other one I just cut off the top of, and we'll see what becomes of that. I repotted it, and it's watered in, and you know, all that stuff. So we'll see. It'll probably push new growth, and maybe I'll have a interestingly shaped lemon cypress shrub. I don't know. So anyways, yeah, so these ones here, I probably could have planted one on the back side, but you know, again, this is kind of knowing your garden and knowing that the dogs run through there. I just had a feeling that that one would end up getting whipped with tails and, you know, bonked by the dogs. Even this one here, I should probably kind of encourage it to stay, you know, closer to the pot, just so that they don't bonk it too much. But I mean, you do see it as you walk along the path. You do see the back side of it, so it would probably be ideal to have one more in the back. Should I come across one for the other one also, I may do that. But anyway, there's not too much. Well, there's still a couple months left of the growing season, probably before my first frost. So it wouldn't be the worst thing. Oh, and there's Teak over there eating a bee. Anyway, it wouldn't be the worst thing to put in another one on the backside. All right, that's going to do it for me for this front garden cleanup project. Just needed that maintenance. It looks better than when we started for sure, but you know, like I said, it's a work in progress. It needs some revamping, but that's okay. That's for another day for sure. I'm happy with how these containers turned out, and hoping that I can keep these lemon cypress alive this time. And yeah, so thanks for hanging out with me today while I did this project, and I hope it was helpful. Hopefully it was inspiring to get out and do some more pruning and maintenance in your yard. And yeah, thanks for hanging out. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.